Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. We have a Kundo clock, anniversary clock, that doesn't work. And so let's just take a look at it. I bought this off of probably eBay or GW, I don't know which, because if they're the right price, I don't mind getting them. And so it was the right price. I got it. So anyway, let's take a look at this one. Oh, and by the way, if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It's free. Okay, let's look at this. So this is the clock. Obviously the outside's dirty. It needs to be polished, that kind of stuff. It has two levers here on the side you can pull out, and it unlocks the box. And you can see it needs to be cleaned up pretty bad. But anyway, I've been monkeying with this clock, and I thought, well, I should make a video for you if you end up either working on your own, not for sure knowing what you're doing and what to look for, or if you got it like I did offline, what's wrong with this clock. Sometimes you can get by with just oiling them and wind them up and they work just fine. On this one, the fork here that's hooked to the pendulum wire was on the other side of the actual pendulum piece, so there's no way this clock could have ticked. And then this fork was so loose because it was sitting at an angle that I moved it a little bit and it's just sliding up and down the wire. So that was one of the things wrong with this clock. Now, what I decided to do is I went ahead and oiled this side of the clock. Now I want to take the front off, the dial, and oil the other side of the clock, because why should you only oil one side of the clock when both sides of the clock needs to be oiled? So this is the clock, and I looked in the book, looking at the back plate of this clock to try to figure out which one it is, and believe it or not, this plate wasn't in the clock. The one that comes, we'll say closest, is a 1965, and the only difference is where the naming was on the clock back here. I couldn't find that one in the book, but I found one that had the same exact holes and whatnot. Now this one here could be older than 65, and here again, we're just guessing because it's hard to figure out some of these. Anyway, on this clock here, it has a taper pin in it. When they got rid of the taper pins and started putting the nuts on, I have no idea. This one may be a lot older than I'm thinking it is, only because it has the taper pin in it. I'm going to lock this pendulum up. And on here, you lift, on this one, you lift the pendulum up and you slide this over, and there's a groove in the pendulum that holds it so it's safe now and you're not tearing your wire up. I just know this is going to go flying if I try it a different way. Oh, we got her. So we have the washer on here. Get off of there. The convex, I think they call that. And it looks like we have another washer on here too. Maybe not. No, it's just part of the hand. And now we can take this, it's a metric, I'm sure. I got a 3/16 where I can put a wrench back here and turn it until that's straight. There's one here. You look at those to make sure they're straight. Putting the wrench on here, and you're looking at that there, so it's straight, so it'll pull right off. That does have a nice shine to it. And so with that off, now I can oil this up where all these pivots are, and let's see how well it runs. So I'm going to add a drop of oil on there. I don't want to get carried away. And if there's too much oil, you put too much oil on there, get a tissue and dab it off of there. Because all that oil does is collects dust, which this is a sealed unit because of the case. But just the same, now you're going to stain your brass. I mean, take your pick what you want to do. So the reason why we're oiling the clock, fixing the spring wire so things are working to the best of what they can. We're trying to find out whether there is anything wrong with this clock, but normally your main spring inside the barrel, most of these clocks have never been worked on, and if this is a 1965, more than likely there's a chance that the spring needs to be taken out, cleaned, so it can do its job too, because it could be all gummed up in there from the old oil. So far this has been ticking along, let's say just fine. I don't know if it's ticking, it's not necessarily ticking enough, because I do believe you're supposed to be, you figure your spot right there, that doesn't even come a full swing around, and it should come clear around, right there's the one, around this area here. That might be too much, I got the wrong one. Okay, let's mark it with my finger on this one. So we got one full, and I'm going to say half. So we need a little bit more than that. Let's mark it with this one here. One full and a half. That's approximately what you want with your pendulum, so that way it's not running too fast or running too slow. There's also a chance someone's been messing with this dial right here. That's how you speed up or slow down your clock. And it has the plus and minus on there usually. This has an A and a B, or A and an R. What that means in German, I have no idea. But normally, spinning it to the right will speed up your clock. Turning it to the left normally slows your clock down. So while that's ticking away, I'm going to go ahead and take the top off of this, and we might take this whole thing apart. I think what we're going to do is go ahead and take this whole thing apart, and that way we can get in here and clean the brass to bring it back to what it looked like brand new, hopefully, or close to it. Just be careful that you don't start losing your glass and it breaks. This one here has straight glass except the front plate, and the front plate is beveled, and it has 3 decorative lines for a detail, I guess we'll call it. And it's only in these 2 corners. You can see how dirty this is. This gives you a good chance to get it all cleaned up. But be careful with this stuff, especially your front one with beveled glass, because if you can even find it, it's expensive if you were to take it in with the measurement and told them what you wanted done like this. So these are just plain glass. So if those broke, you can get those cut or cut them yourself. And now the rest is just taking these screws out here so you can get them totally apart. These even feel loose. Now I notice they have a little bit of something in there to keep the glass snug. That's probably window putty. So either don't clean that out or put just a dab of window putty in there so that way it keeps your glass from rattling. I've found myself to make my job easier, especially this piece here and this piece here. I'm not going to do it to these, they're not as bad, but I soak these in clock cleaner so I can clean them better. And we'll go ahead and take those screws out so you can get the handle out of the way to give an easier cleaning job when you're trying to rub that down. So this is what it looks like after I got it cleaned up. Looks a whole heck of a lot better. But as we can see here, it's barely running. I've whipped it around a few more times to see if I can get it to take off, but it's not necessarily wanting to. And this way I can go ahead and clean this base too to kind of match the rest of it. So I'm going to take this apart and clean the gears because I have them out, but I'm also going to clean the mainspring on this to see if I can get a better swing on what's going on there. So I locked the pendulum into place. I took the screw out up here so I can get this out. I have to lift it up over, and there we go, we got it out. Now I can go ahead and put some weight on here, or lifting it up, so we get that pendulum out. And on this one here, you have to push this here washer down, and there's a pin inside there that you have to push through, and it does have a, I'll show it to you, it does have a little extra groove on it. This up where I can grab it maybe, or else I'll push it through. There we go. So it does have a bit of a groove right there on it. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's so small and kind of darkish. That's the kind of hold it into place. It doesn't necessarily need to, but sometimes it does help. And actually, I don't even know why I took that apart, so I'm not doing anything with any of this. Actually, I don't know why I took this apart, because the wire's good now, but I guess that way you can see on this one anyway how to get that, or yeah, how to separate this from that. Sliding this down, it's spring loaded, and pushing the pin out. So I know this is loaded, and normally it winds this way, just in case you're wondering. So I'm going to go to wind it up. I'm going to flick this pin, which is a clicker that holds the power in here. I'm going to go ahead and flip it up, and now I can let this down. And there it's down. I'm going to go ahead and take that washer off. We can call it an E-clip. It's always kind of a strange one. And now we can get the hour hand shaft off. We can get the minute hand shaft off. And we can take this off. Now we're paying attention on what's on here. For example, see this washer here? There's a washer back here that we need to take off. And the reason why I'm having you pay attention to it, if you ever take yours apart, take it apart slowly, because sometimes these washers will stick to the back of a gear, and then they'll fall on your desktop, and then you wonder, well, where do those go? This one happens to have two of them on here. And so if I were you, I'd go ahead and take pictures of all this, but you'll want to take pictures with your minute shaft pointing down, or your hand shaft pointing down. Take pictures of your gears, pictures through here, pictures through here, and we're going to take this plate off and see if we can get the gears to stay where they're at in order to take a picture downward at the gears to make sure to see what they look like. If I'm not taking the thing fully apart, just I need those plates, and those plates will get hand washed. I won't put them in the cleaner. But if I was to only do just the barrel, you can do it just like this. Take the screws out and lift that plate off of there. Now we can lift the plate, and hopefully the gears will stay setting down. It might be a little bit tight because the two bolts here are holding the frame down. I'm going to have to loosen those so this will come apart. I went ahead and just took it off the stand. It's not really important to have it on the stand until you're wanting to test it. So now you can get a picture of all that. And you should be able to slide this barrel out. Yep. Now you can get a good picture of it with that big barrel out of your way. This spring actually looks good. Looks like it's got some fresh oil already in it. And it did wind down really nice. And because these are kind of a pain anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and leave this, because possibly these gears, which some of them kind of pulled out a little tough, they are the ones that are probably the guilty party of not letting this thing do its job. I got it all back together again. I'm not putting this in right away because I found for some reason I have to put my other plate on, wind it up and let it run. Of course, that's after I've oiled it, and for some reason they seem to work better that way. So let me get the gears on. So now I'm going to install the crutch into the clock. You got to make sure anytime you're going to take these plates off or loosen them or anything else, make sure all the power is off of the clock from the mainspring, because there could be a little bit of power there and you open it up and all of a sudden it lets go and it can start tearing up your gears. So always, anytime you take this apart, drop that so it has no power whatsoever. So I have the clock leveled out because the pendulum is pointing right in the middle, and watching the verge rocking back and forth and the gears actually turning. It's been doing that for a while, and I adjusted this here round block here to get the even tick and talk in there, as in once the gear moved a little bit, it had a few seconds on one side, then once it came around this way, it had a few seconds on this side, and so that's what I consider timing the clock when it comes to that. And like I say, it's been running, so I'm going to go ahead and install all the parts onto the front and watch to make sure it still ticks, because just in case there's something messed up or I did something wrong with putting the hands on whatnot, I need to pay attention to that. And of course, the first thing I got to do is put those two small washers on here. If you remember at the first of the video, trying to remember all this stuff, and like I say, pictures are your friend. So this has been running pretty good. I will admit it did stop, and the washer that you put on after the minute hand and before that cupped brass, we'll call it a washer too, it must have been a little bit too tight. There's the washer in here, and what it was causing too much stress, and so it stopped it from ticking. Once I took it off, the hand is still stiff enough it doesn't just fall down, and has been working fine ever since. Now I got a question for if there's any professionals here. I would guess this here came with the clock, and I don't doubt that this might have been a shipping wire when the clock was brand new. My guess, don't know, my guess is somewhere it goes on the pendulum, clips around something about that big around, and then you go ahead and lock the pendulum in, and that might hold all of this together, such as once you pull the pendulum up, you'd slide this in and this would go between the plate, and the locking mechanism would be this way. That's my guess. But I'm keeping it with the clock, because if it does go to the clock, that's kind of unique to have that. And so I do hope you appreciated this video. I'm not really into the anniversary clock. I'm just getting into it, and I'm trying to come up with things that I've ran into, so in case you're going to start out or even work on your own, things to watch out for to see why your clock might not be running, or give you hints of what might be going on so you can figure it out yourself. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Give me a thumbs up if you don't mind, because I love those. And if you'd like to leave a comment, I appreciate them and read them all. And I usually wait about a week. Sometimes I answer them sooner, so I do answer those things. Anyway, until next time, God bless.